Hi everyone. Today's video is about the TDS setup. For TDS calculations, we have to do some setup withholding tax authorities, settlement periods, withholding tax codes, and withholding tax groups, withholding tax components, and withholding tax component groups. After these setups, we need to create the TAN number and we have to assign on the legal entity. In the same way, we have to set up on vendor master also. So we have to update TDS details, TDS group and pawn number on vendor master. Here also I'm mentioning the path also. Today just I set up for only one section 194I only. So in the same way we can create 194C, 194H and 194J also. So firstly go to the tax module. The first setup is withholding tax. Withholding tax authorities. For withholding tax authorities, we need to create the one vendor. So we need to create the one vendor and assign on the vendor master also. So firstly, I'm creating the one vendor. Here is two vendor groups. One is foreign and local. So we have to create the vendor. Just we have to assign it only. So but to easy understanding, I'm creating the group also. Just I'm create one vendor and then assign to the particular GST vendor group. So just I'm creating the TDS group here, vendor group. Then I will create one vendor account, then assign to the same group. Actually, the group is not required here. The vendor group is not required. We can directly create and assign already existing groups. But for easy understanding, I'm creating the group also. The next is settlement periods. So I'm changing the path. Tax, then indirect tax, then withholding tax settlements. The second step is the withholding tax periods. So click new. Here is one error is coming. TDS parameter must be selected in the area of the general ledger parameter, the active the TDS feature. So we need to enable the TDS active on the general ledger parameters. So go to the general ledger module, then ledger and general ledger parameter. Under direct and taxes, here is the set of we need to active the TDS and for invoice and payment. and tax reduction etc. should be enabled. So enabling here both TDS and TCS also. So when before applying the tax to invoice payments that is don't have the taxes, that is based on the client requirements, so we can either enable or disable. Then save it, then go back, then go to the tax model, then go to the settlement periods. Here is settlement periods, nothing but periods. The earlier we created the fiscal periods, and the same way we have to create the periods April, May, June up to March. So we have to create the periods, then only we can post the TDS transactions. Just I'm giving the name settlement period is TDS month. Description we can give the same or anything. Then here is we need to select the withholding tax authority. So withholding tax authority we can create here. Click the right click you, or we can go back and can create. Earlier we created TDS group only, but we did not create the vendor, right? So now we have to create the vendor. It's withholding tax authority. Here is we need to select the vendor account. So this is already two existing vendors here, so I want to create the new one. Just given the vendor name is TDS vendor, then we have to select the assign the group. So I earlier created one TDS group vendor. So assign to the TDS group. Then just assign the language. So I created a vendor, then I'm assigning the vendor. TDS vendor is assigned here. Then save it. Now select the withholding tax authority. Then select the periods. April 1st. Financial year starts 23, so we need to select 23. Then 30th April. If you want to create the more periods, you have to click the new period in the action pane. But one error is coming. Quantity of the units in the period is not specified. So unit is we have to specify either days or months. So basically TDS is calculating on a monthly basis, right? So but then we have to select on monthly. Yes, and the period is updated. Period interval is here is we have to select the months. One, just we have to give the one. Number of minutes is one. If you want to click the new period, then select the 1st April and 31st May. In the same way, we have to create up to 12 periods of April to March. Up to March, we have to create the periods, new periods. One more error is coming. The value of combination of TDS months 0 TDS field settlement. Yeah. So that is a warning only. So then I go to the next step. So withholding tax codes. So click new here. So I'm setting for TDS is 194i. So I want to set up 194i. That's the reason here is I'm giving the 194i in withholding tax field. The name we can give the same or we can give the text also. The currency is INR and here is we had to assign the TDS summary account payable account. 202075. Then tax type should be TDS. Then select the TD settlement periods. Then withholding tax components. So here is a withholding tax component not created. So I'm creating the withholding tax components. Click new. This I'm giving the same 194i. So withholding tax component group we have to create it. Here is I have to select the resident or resident only. Description it's we can give it. It's not mandatory. Save it. Then select the withholding tax component and the receivable account is not mandatory because it's not a TDS. If the TCS setup, we need to select the receivable account only. But here is a TDS payable. That's the reason I give in the main account for TDS payable. And the calculation parameters, we have to select the percentage of the gross amount. And round is a general round of only. So I'm giving the 0.001 and also selecting the normal round off. Here is values. So we need to update the values here. But you give the period from April to financial year starting to end just April to March. Here is we need to assign the percentage only. Basically, is 194i. Just we have to assign the tax percentage. I will check in the tax percentage for residents and non-residents. Basically, is a 10 percentage for who have the pawn number. If the vendor is don't have the pawn number, should be the 20 percentage. I will check on the Google. TDS slab for the financial year 23-24. The 194 I is 10 percentage. Rent paid for land and buildings and furniture 2 lakh. Threshold limit is 2 lakh 40,000. You 10 percentage. Who have the pawn number? If the pawn number is there on vendor master, the TDS should be calculated 10 percentage. For non-residents, 20 percentage. Here is in the value field we have to update and pawn for non-availability 20 percentage. Here is the minimum limit is maximum we can give it, but it is not mandatory. We can give in a threshold also. Here is apply threshold is important. So I will enable later. I will tell you this importance of enable threshold hierarchy. Here is we need to create the withholding tax group. Click new. The select TDS and applicable tax rates is income tax. Here is exclude charges for the TDS or TCS. If we want to calculate the TDS and charges we can enable. So if you don't want to calculate TDS and charges, just we need to select no only. Basically, every customer should be select no only because the TDS is not calculating and charges. So we have to select the N no. Select the withholding tax code. Here is you can assign the percentage here 10 and 20. The field is disabled. The no issue we can assign in the threshold references. I'm trying to remove, then try to add again. Then go to the designer and click new. Select the tax code. Then save it. The basic setup is done. Then we have to create the TAN number. So we have to create the TAN number. Then we have to assign legal entities. Here is threshold definitions. So click the new. We need to create the threshold definitions. Then save it. Then threshold designer is enabled. click threshold designer. Here is we need to create the scenarios. So we have to select the financial year April first, then 31st March. Here is we need to update the lower limit and maximum limit as well. Basically, the 194I threshold limit is 2,40,000. Okay, so up to 2,40,000 there is no TDS. If the 2,40,000 is crossed, so it should be calculated the TDS after 2,40,000 only. So in the first scenario, so we have to give the 0 to 2,40,000 without limits, lower limit, upper limit. Also, we can calculate the we can. Do the TDF setup, but here is I am giving the lower limit and maximum limit also, lower limit and upper limit. So 0 to 2,40,000 in the first scenario. In the second scenario is so lower limit is 2,40,000. So TDS will calculate only if the cross the 2,40,000 only. Here is I am giving the blank and upper limit. Then his type is accumulative or transaction for line, but I'm calculating the cumulative only, so it calculating based on the accumulating value. Here it should be tax value should be enabled. Here the tax value is not coming because so we did not enable threshold on withholding tax course. If the withholding threshold is not enabled, tax value should be not updated here, though that is an important setup. It should be 23. The final level should be enabled. So tax file is not updating. So we have to go to the withholding tax course. Then we have to enable the threshold hierarchy. So enable threshold hierarchy and pawn based communication. In threshold preparations, so we have to select the vendors because we want to calculate the TDS and vendor only right now. So our account type should be vendor, and selected all. Then select the threshold 194A. Then save it. And the designer, here is now is the tax value is enabled because we have enabled in the threshold hierarchy in the tax code withholding tax codes. Here is a click new. So here is we need to select the pawn status. If the pawn status is available, so we have to change the status here. If the not available, so we can continue with the not available. Then we have to assign the percentage 20%. If the pawn card is not available, TDS should be calculated 20 percentage. And click one more new. One is for not available, one is for TDS received. If you already received the pawn number, then we have to update on vendor master. Then we have to give the percentage here and the value field. If the now pawn status is not available, then update the 20 percentage in the value field. Here is a pawn status is received, so we have to give 10 percentage on this field. So for second scenario, 242 our maximum limit also we need to update the pawn status, and we have to update the TDS percentage also. And click new. The pawn card status is not available, then update 20 percentage. Then save it. So due to threshold enable, the tax value is updated, so we are given the scenarios and percentage also. Then we need to update the GST, sorry, TDS details on vendor master. So we need to update the TDS group under invoice and delivery. So we need to enable withholding tax, and we have to select the TDS group. So I'm selecting the 194I. If the vendor is applicable vendor 194I, we have to select the 194I. If the vendor is applicable 194C, so we have to create the 194C group, and then we have to assign. Then go to the tax information. If the PAN card is available for this vendor, so we need to select received, then we have to update. If the PAN card is applied, just we need to update the reference number. So here is a PAN card status is received. I'm updating the PAN number on vendor master. Then go to the enterprise tax registration numbers. Here is sales tax direct, and registration type number should be company. So click new. So we need to update the TAN number, company TAN number. So in registration fields, just give the company TAN number field, and the description we can write anything, or we can give the same number. So if you do want to update a circle number or ward number, assessing officer, we can update here. Then save it. So here is that TAN number registration is done. And then the same TAN number we have to update on legal entity. So go to the organization administration, then go to the organizations, then legal entities. Select the Sanway INC, then click under addresses, click more option, then go to the advanced. Here is there is an option the tax information. So click edit. The tax account number field is disabled here, so we are unable to give the TAN number. So there is an option. So I created already two tax informations. I'm deleting one. So the field is disabled, right? So I have to create the new one. Just I'm giving the name. Just I'm selecting here GST number and reference group. This is for only GST, not TDS. For TDS, we should add the TAN number only. So now we are able to assign the TAN number. So we are enable primary, then clicks save. So TAN number is added successfully. Now we are posting one vendor invoice general whether TDS is calculating or not. We have to check. So I'm selecting the vendor, Samsung vendor. I'm selecting invoice date. Then give invoice number. Offset account, I'm giving the rent account. So rent is come under 194J, so that's the reason I have selected rent GL. There is an option of withholding tax in the action plan. So TDS is not calculated, so we have to check. And the tax document for only GST, not TDS. Just I'm checking only. So try to post whether it is validating or not. So there is a error or period for 6/14/24 open does not exist. Yeah, maybe you were selected. Check the invoice date is 23. That is right, and the posting date is 2024. That's the reason. So we got a error. So I'm selecting the 23. This fiscal period is 23/24. So we need to select the same period. So that's the reason TDS is not calculated. Now save it and refresh the same. Then we have to check the withholding tax. Click the withholding tax. Yes, now the TDS is calculated 94I and 10 percentage on original amount is 3 lakhs and the tax is 6,000. So TDS threshold limit is 2,40,000. So we have to check whether it is 6,000 is the right figure or wrong figure. The bill amount is 3 lakhs and threshold limit is 2,40,000. 3 lakhs minus 2,40,000, 60,000. The tax should be calculated only 60,000 only. The percentage 10 percentage. So on 60,000, 10 percentage is 6,000. So tax also calculated exactly. So now we can post the invoice. So invoice is posted successfully. Now we can check the voucher also. So 3 lakhs is the payable amount and 6,000 is the TDS and liabilities, vendor liabilities 2,94,000.